it's called enclosed cognition. Like
Of course, you know the term for it.
We teach it.
Yeah.
Well, the brain knows that you're wearing yoga pants. And so it just performs differently.
Right. And God bless whoever invented yoga pants, but this may not be the place for them.
Keith Walters in the house
Gina.
with the woman your mother warned you about. It's good to see you.
It's great to see you too. You look just like all professional there. Nice studio.
Yeah.
Great color.
Cool.
Hair just looks like beautiful.
My hair is banging.
Your hair is banging.
Oh, hey, Warners, welcome to another episode of The Women Your Mother Warned You About. It's me, Gina from Sales Gravy, which this show is sponsored by, and the Keith Walters, who helped give birth to this show.
Wow.
Welcome back. Did you have a visual?
Yes, but I'm not going to go there.
Okay, that's probably a good idea. Our listeners haven't heard your voice in a while. Just a quick refresher, so they know who you are, what you do. Remind them.
What I do is I build great companies, and I love to talk. So here I am. Now, I'm an advisor. I've built a number of companies and sold them, and I'm an advisor to a handful of companies right now.
Mm-hmm. You're living the life, basically.
The life. Making money from all the mistakes I made.
Oh, that's good. You're still making money from the mistakes you made. I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah. It's all a lesson. Life's all a lesson.
I love it. Anything new and exciting?
There is nothing really new and exciting. It's still just kind of moving on, waiting for the craziness that surrounds us to sometime go away. But
one day, it feels like it's been going on forever. And as this episode is airing on December 30th, which happens, by the way, to be my birthday.
Gina.
Yeah. This is the birthday episode. This is our birthday episode. Well, my birthday, but it's our last episode of the year of 2021, moving into 2022. And I thought it would be cool, like we like to do at the end of the year, is kind of like wrap up, talk about learnings from the year, advice going into next year. I'd like to talk about that. We're once again kind of still dealing with the new normal and what's that mean, and the next variant, and what's that mean for business, and all of those things that are on people's minds. What are some of your highlights of the past year? Anything stick out for you?
Well, it has been a crazy year from business perspective. Growth, change, pivots. All the clients I'm working with, it is so dynamic. Most are just doing a lot of business, doing very successfully. So that's been a highlight for the year, is just watching and seeing the ability of my clients to adjust and move forward.
Yeah.
The pivot, a lot of pivoting going on.
A lot of pivoting going on. What do you think has been some of the better strategies for those who are actually doing well from what you've experienced? What are some of the things that they've done to help them do well in a new normal?
One is shorten their planning cycle, because instead of being able to do a plan for a year, who knows what a year from now is, and things are starting to slow down a little bit, but shortening the planning cycle, especially going into 2021, was really good. Most of the companies I work with, most of my clients shorten their planning cycle from a year to a quarter to 6 months, so brought it down. You want to plan as far as you can see or have a sense of where you're going to go. And when things are so dynamic, that's been one of the keys.
What about I know this comes up a lot. I see it, I hear it a lot. Salespeople who make excuses still around COVID, and that's not going away anytime soon.
God, well, that's, people tend to always want to have an excuse, I think. And,
Yeah.
Whenever I hear that excuse, for me, that's time to put the brakes on and ask the question, oh, none of your competitors had to deal with that. Oh, no one else has to deal with that?
Mm-hmm.
No, that's the playing field. Get used to it.
Yeah.
And there are companies who are just going gangbusters in this, not all related to, COVID itself. That's the playing field. Yeah, go with it.
So the company's not related to COVID type products and services that are doing well. Besides shortening planning cycles, what else do you think that they're doing that's helping them?
Well, a lot of those companies are stronger in culture, so they're finding it's a little bit easier to retain talent. The talent market is a burden and is going to be a massive burden going into 2022. So the companies who are already strong culturally are having a better time at it with that. Everybody's having a tough time. Companies who are recognizing, oh, wow, we're losing employees. Now we need to improve our culture. It's a little late. So that's another key one. And, that's a soapbox for me anyway. So,
yeah. Well, it's you and I have always been on that same page that it is about culture, and you can retain employees to a certain extent. If they can find a better culture, they're gonna jump.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Doing those sorts of things and always looking about, when some problem arises, ask the question, what opportunity is going to come out of this problem? How do we pivot around the problem and make new opportunity around it? And, I think that's huge because, product life cycle changing, what's working changing, technology change, all these things are being driven through some of the problems that are coming up. Take advantage of it.
So what would you recommend? Like, how do we get companies and leaders into this mindset of preparing for new opportunities?
I think part of it's a constant question, maybe ask at the leadership team level of, are we seeing any fresh opportunities? Are we, what, and I think you actually probably want to lead that with, what problems do we see? Long-term always been planning tool is the SWOT matrix: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Mm-hmm. And the strengths and weaknesses are the internals, and the opportunities and threats are the externals. And for years and years, the opportunities and threats were almost always the same list.
Yeah.
Right. And new regulation, and they're valid opportunities and threats. But over the last 2 years, the opportunities and threats is changing more frequently than the strengths and weaknesses. It's a complete reversal. And so it's like looking at that SWOT and focusing on that opportunity threat on a constant basis with the recognition that threats become opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. And you really can't do any of that if your culture's not great.
Yeah. You have to be able to be transparent. Say, oh, we suck at this, or this is going to cause us to suck.
Well, I mean, you have to be willing to look at it, right? If your culture is not in that place, and your attitude is, we don't need to look at this.
Right.
That's where it bites you in the ass.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing is, I think companies are getting to see a different aspect of their people during this past year or so, which is always good. It's always good to get different lenses on who your people are, what their strengths and weaknesses are, how they make judgments.
It's funny you should say that. I just got off a sales conversation with an organization that wants to bring me out to do a keynote presentation for their sales kickoff. And, we've been kind of going back and forth on some ideas and getting a feel for what their desired outcomes are from that. What do they want to walk away with from that? And, the virtual selling piece continues to come up. Like, it's not going away. Even when I got on the call with them, I've already had one call with them. I got elevated to the next level of stakeholders. And I've got like 2 more calls in this sales process. And I knew that going in, but I knew that there are a couple of things with this. I knew what I was up against, right? Because I did enough discovery to find out what did I need to know for these stakeholders. So virtual selling, big deal for them. Their people aren't doing it. And they're not turning their cameras on.
Right.
Right. And I specifically did the meeting in my fancy schmancy studio here, right? I've got my office, which is kind of cool. But I did it in the studio because I wanted them to experience a virtual learning. This is what we do for training, but I also do sales calls from here. It just has a different look and a different feel, a different professionalism to it. And of course they were like oohing and eyeing it, like they loved it. And they're like, oh, and I said, well, you're talking about virtual selling. They're like, we've actually had a keynote already done on that, but our team's not putting it in place. And we really need this to happen going into 2022. And I said, well, that's a leadership issue, number one. Right. So the first thing, there were 3 of them on this call. And one of them said, well, they won't turn on their cameras and, the customers aren't either. And I'm like, okay, these are 2 issues here. 1, leadership. 2, set the expectation for the customer, right? So this is a simple one. Tell them to turn their cameras on. It's an expectation. It's not going away. You have to create that connection. And then they said, well, the excuses we get are, well, they're at home and the dog and the kids and and I'm like, and again, this is a leadership issue. Then you give them instruction for how to do this. And then you give them instruction on how to pre-frame it. Everybody knows that people are working from home. It's not considered like unprofessional anymore. It's not considered weird that the majority of people are working from home. Tell them how to set up their space. And then it's an expectation that they turn on the camera, and they can't use working from home as an excuse.
I agree. I mean, that is a leadership question. Tell them what the space is going to look like. If they need a virtual background, get everybody a consistent virtual background. If you're the sales leader, do a check on what they look like on camera. What am I expected to wear? What am I expected to look like? What is my background? Let's easy. Let's not do this from the bathroom. Let's make sure that the background is professional. I mean, I've been in some where people didn't think about their background, and I'm like, oh my God, But how is this any different than showing up in person, not wearing shorts and sandals? It's an expectation. So that's a leadership question. Black and white expectations. You don't meet expectations, there's consequences.
Now, at the same time, the organization has to have a certain level of support around it, meaning, okay, we're all going to be consistent and uniform on this, and we're all going to have a backdrop, and we're all going to have a this, and we're all going to have a that. And you don't have to spend a ton of money doing that. It's pretty simple to do. You just, it's studio in a box. I don't know. Just give them the guidelines for what to do and what those expectations are, including how to dress.
Right.
Right. Like including this is something we teach at Sales Gravy, right? I get up and I put on clothes, not yoga pants. Right. I get fully dressed and fully made up and hair fully done as if I'm going to go face to face.
There's an energy that kind of comes with wearing the uniform.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's called enclosed cognition. Like
Of course, you know the term for it.
We teach it.
Yeah.
Well, the brain knows that you're wearing yoga pants. And so it just performs differently.
Right. And God bless whoever invented yoga pants, but this may not be the place for them.
Correct. I mean, yoga pants are great. And I'm definitely doing work differently when I'm dressed to go in person.
Absolutely. And I know that in your studio there, for example, you can operate either standing up or sitting down. And
Correct.
When you're selling, standing up is, I believe, the way to go, even to the point where back in person sales teams and companies, it was if you're on the phone with a prospect, you're standing up because you bring a different energy to the conversation. Sales Gravy provided a banner for you and your microphone set up, that's not very expensive, so companies are going to provide if you are building a virtual sales team, there's a few dollars you're going to spend for everybody. Big deal.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because guess what? These companies now that are downsizing and not paying for space anymore, right? We get a lot of companies downsizing, getting out of their companies now that are completely virtual, getting rid of their office space. And I know of a friend of yours in the Dallas area that unloaded a lot of square footage, and that's a lot of money to save. So take a piece of that and then give everybody the things that they need.
Well, and it's going to pay off, and it's going to pay off both for the company and for the salesperson, because you making a sales pitch from an environment that looks the way your mini studio looks, which is just a corner of a room in your house. Is going to make a difference in the sales process. I wouldn't do a sale. My background is, kind of like a little bit, this isn't the best background to do a sales from, so I'd do something different. So, yeah. And I have two different spaces I work. I mean, my office space is a nice cozy space in a sunroom with great lighting, but I also have additional lighting in that space so that it has the right look. But it makes a difference. The call one of the calls I did today, I was walking into a situation where, how do I put it? There was already going to be some resistance. I knew that there was going to be some resistance to working with me specifically because of my improv background. And so my coach in that organization, had shared that with me, but she was still a big believer in it. And I said, listen, I don't want you to talk about my improv background at all. I'm like, just wipe it out. And they've already worked with Sales Gravy, so they've had a good experience with Sales Gravy. They worked with other improv organizations. I'm like, let's not even lead with that. Let's talk about your desired outcomes and then go from there. I don't want to hide the improv, but I don't want to lead with it, especially if you've had a bad experience from two other companies, which they did. I'm like, let's talk about these desired outcomes. And then let me go from there in how I show up with it. So because virtual selling was a topic that was important to them, that's how I pivoted. I'm like, all right, I need to get them on board with me. And so the professionalism of the space is what was able to reignite. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I said that to him too. I'm like, I want to model this for you because this could be really easy for your team to do.
It is all that side of it is a leadership side. Now, getting the customer to be face-to-face on virtual selling, that's kind of more of a sales. That's more of a sales thing. But that's your salesperson creating expectations prior. It's not show up, will you turn your video on? It's when you send the invitation saying, I really look forward to seeing you. People often ask, should I turn my camera on or off? And we suggest you turn it on. Let's like set it up. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I say every time I confirm a call or set up a call. I'm like looking forward to seeing you on our Zoom call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And from a salesperson, I would hate to be selling to a blank screen, because you can't, we're already limited in communication channels since we're not in person. You need every communication channel you can get.
Yeah, that's and if their camera's not on, I'm like, oh, I can't see you.
Yep, that's what I lead with.
I'm like, I can't. Oh, is your camera not working? I just did a training to a large group of people the other day where there must have been 50 people in my session and nobody had their camera on. And I was like, listen, you know my energy. I come in like a wrecking ball and I'm like all excited. And I'm like, I really feel like I'm alone here. And if you guys don't turn on your cameras, I feel like nobody's here. And then bing, bing, bing. 4 cameras out of 50 went on. 4. And then I was like, hey, I'm like, I'm so sorry. Thank you for turning on your cameras. And now, I keep picking on you guys because I feel like you're the only ones here. And thank you. But it's like, this isn't that hard, you guys. I'm not even asking you to speak. I just want to see you.
Well, and people have the opportunity to remain anonymous, and they're going to choose that by default.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is interesting, talking about going into 2022, this whole new normal that we've been living in 2021 of the blend of on-site, like in-person, virtual, it's an interesting thing. It's just such an interesting thing to juggle right now, of having to go back and forth between the two.
It is interesting. I laugh at it from one perspective, which is a number of months ago, I was sitting at a restaurant and listening to the 3 or 4 folks at the table behind me talk about, oh, I'm not going back to the office. I'm not going to go back to the office. It's just, it's too dangerous, and I'm not going to go back to the office. And of course, where they're sitting is in a crowded restaurant. People seem to be able to get out, to go shopping, to go to restaurants, to go to even to ball games and stuff, but it's too dangerous to go into the office. So that aspect of it is just, it's kind of funny. Another aspect of it, and a lot of people disagree with me on this, but longer term, I think employees need to be really careful, because when you're in the office, you have a distinct advantage. It's the same advantage in real estate. It's called location, location, location. A virtual team can be hired anywhere. One of my clients, the new sales team is in Brazil at a 40% of the compensation cost.
Ooh.
In an environment where people weren't paid for 9 months to sit on their couches. They need money. They need results. They're hungry.
They're thrilled
to be working in the office in Brazil, in the Brazilian office, which is remote. But, once you accept remote, the first thing companies are going to do is look at what they know, which is local remote. But 10 miles or 1,000 miles or 2,000 miles, does it really make a difference? And so one of the things employees aren't taking into account is the long-term advantage that they are giving up in focusing on being remote.
Hi, this is Jeb Blount. There's a reason why thousands of sales professionals and top companies across the globe hone their sales skills at SalesGrave University. You see, SalesGrave University is different than most learning platforms. First, we have live courses taught in a virtual classroom by our master trainers that start almost every single day. And our e-learning platform is populated with hundreds of hours of sales training content produced by some of the top sales trainers in the world, including Gina's spontaneous selling course, which is worth checking out. Now, I've got some good news. If you've never taken a course on SalesGrave University, if you're a new user, you can take your very first course for free. That's any course on the platform, absolutely free. Just go to learn.salesgravy.com. That's learn.salesgravy.com, or click the e-learning tab in the top menu at salesgravy.com. Pick out your course, and when you check out, use coupon code FREECOURSE to get that course for free. That is free course to get your very first course for free.
There's always been, a threat for salespeople of less sales jobs because we've got more technology, we've got more capability to research, and the differentiator is you, the salesperson, right? You can move the needle. You are going to be in the final stretch to close the deal. But, I want to talk about this because you brought up the talent market, and we continue to struggle with the talent market. And I hear this a lot. But to your point, it's kind of like back in the days when you could find help in the Philippines for administrative work and get it at a fraction. And is that really what we want to do again? I mean, in a sales perspective, like, hey, salespeople, wake up. If you don't want to do it, somebody will, because now we have the world to choose from. We don't just have the US to choose from. We'll go or your little town that you live in. There are other places we can get people.
Yeah. So, if you look at that whole business from a life cycle, it started off with what is called business process outsourcing, where you would take big chunks of business, a call center, a help desk, something research department, a specialized group, and you would outsource it offshore. Now it's becoming more specialized position offshore. If my CFO is going to be remote, I can find a highly competent CFO in a lot of other places in the world.
Mm-hmm.
If I need a controller, if I need a more specialized position, that's more about hiring an individual rather than groups. Those individuals are out there all over the world.
Yeah.
And there's a lot. The talent pool is bigger than the U.S. And over a period of time, costs continue in the U.S. to go up. That's the natural move of the market.
Why do you think we're struggling with the talent market?
Well, I think the biggest struggle, and be careful here because I'm on the board of a company which is in the labor market and labor analysis market, data market, and I'm also a data geek. So, the biggest reason we're struggling right now is the shrinking of the workforce. There are a mass exodus of people from the workforce. The biggest cohort of people leaving the workforce is women 50 years old and older.
Why?
Really good question. The hypothesis is that it's a number of reasons. A number of those women are working in auxiliary jobs, if you will, and with the increase in the stock market and the increase in investments, a lot of them don't feel they need to work anymore when they look at their combined with their spouse, their financial situation when combined with their spouse. And so they're choosing to leave the market. A number of them were forced out of the market when non-essential businesses, and don't get me started on that, were shut down. And they're having a harder time getting back into the market because of an ageism challenge, which affects men and women both. But and I'm not saying it affects women more, but there is that impact, more or less. But there is that impact, and so it's been really interesting that is the largest cohort leaving the workforce.
Yeah, I didn't expect you to say that. I would have thought it would be women, but younger, because they're taking care of children and they're homeschooling.
That's another sizable cohort, but it's actually not as big.
That is so interesting. I'm a woman in my 50s. I still have to work. Clearly, my investments aren't good enough.
Yeah, and I think part of this is, and I haven't seen the data on this, is married versus unmarried.
Ooh, yeah.
Because I think it's. I believe, and hopefully I don't put my foot in my mouth here, I believe it is women 50 and older in what would be a more traditional relationship.
Yeah.
Which fits that cohort.
Yeah. 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 I don't have a sugar daddy, so.
Yeah. Well, do we need to pivot the discussion here then, Gina, of our conversation?
No, it's all good. It's all good.
How does Gina find a sugar daddy? No, you love to work. You would work anyway.
I
would work anyway.
I do. I do love to work. I love what I do, and I would get bored. Well, I mean, I take it back. I would find plenty of hobbies.
I think one other challenge is that people are leaving situations where it's a challenge to work. Oh, I've got to wear a mask all day long. Oh, I've got these restrictions. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, I can't do, that's part of it.
There's that. Yeah. There's that. I've talked to people who are, frustrated with the mandates, and they're trying to get religious exemptions as well. And it's, they're actually quitting jobs because of it. I've seen a lot of that in the military as well.
Yeah, it's been interesting, and and people are quitting jobs because they can't work remotely. It's really an interesting situation, and technology and sales seem to be the two hardest areas to find people in, and I think for different reasons. I think salespeople right now, if you're selling, you're doing well, and it's hard to start new in this kind of environment.
For selling?
Yes.
You mean starting in the environment of what is the new normal?
No, starting new, like leaving somewhere and starting in a new position with it's a little bit harder now because of the uncertainty and new difficulties of prospecting and so forth.
Yeah, I can see that. Because so many companies are also in state of we don't know what's going to happen next. Mm-hmm. I've definitely seen some of that frustration. I worked with someone whose company went through M&A, and then they had issues with not having real budgets in place, and the sales team, like, I get the frustration. At the same time, they're like, well, if you can't give me a budget, how can you expect me to do my job? And I was actually coaching this person, the leader, the sales leader, and I'm like, at some point you just have to say, just do your job and don't worry so much about the numbers. That just do what you did last year.
Yep. Yeah.
Just do what you did last year and go with that until, it's up to the organization to provide that direction. But if they're not, you have two choices: get out or figure it out.
So let me ask you this. I get a lot of pushback from the sales perspective of calling doesn't work anymore. Picking up the phone and calling doesn't work anymore.
Bullshit.
Thank you. That's the answer. Let me write that down.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
People are answering the phone more now than they did before. You know why? They're inundated with email. The emails aren't. I mean, we still need it. We talk about this all the time. We teach this. It's a blended approach in your prospecting. You have to have different touch points. The phone's not going away. It's never going to go away. You have to pick up the phone, and you have to do other things, right? Because you have to create different patterns in the brain and disrupt. And you can't do the same thing over and over again and expect that that's going to have results. And you have to understand your audience and know, are they more likely to pick up the phone, read an email, be on LinkedIn? You have to understand your audience. So, but the phone's never going away. And people, actually, I call people and they pick up the phone. I'm actually surprised. And now I'm actually more surprised that sometimes I will be like, okay, I've got these 3 inbound leads that came in. I got a 20-minute window. Let me call these 3 and leave voicemail. And that's my head. And I had to change it because they all picked up, and I'm like, and then they want to talk. And I'm like, oh, I didn't plan on that. I was planning on a voicemail. People are picking up the phone.
Yep. And, I believe people pick up the phone more when there is some kind of change, like a big pickup in COVID cases. And because those are the points in time when other people want to talk and get security from conversation.
Mm-hmm. People want to talk to people, especially because we have so many people working from home. They want
Right.
they want someone to talk to. Now, me, I'm an interesting person, as we know. I mean,
That's one way to say it.
yeah. I love picking up the phone for the spam calls, I pick up all the calls because I'm like finding out if they're a new prospect because their sales calls, their sales techniques are so bad. So I pick
That's
up.
wonderful.
I do. I'll be like, I'm like, has this technique been working for you? They're like, what? I'm like, this technique. Like, they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, where'd you get my name and number from?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, so I'm just curious, what kind of sales training are you going through? And they like don't know what to do because they've totally flipped the script on them. To me, it's entertainment. Like, let me take this call. It'll be fun.
Well, and I haven't done this in a number of years, but when building a sales team, yep, I would answer the sales calls because if somebody did a good job, one of my responses would be, well, I'm not buying what you're selling, but do you want a job?
I like that. There's some advice going into 2022 if you need new talent. Answer the cold calls coming to you.
Answer the cold calls coming to you. Let someone sell. If they do a good job, consider them for your company.
Yeah.
It's a great place to recruit.
I also use the bad emails and LinkedIn messages I get as a way to prospect.
Right. I can't believe you sent this.
Oh my gosh. I still want to write that book of bad messages on LinkedIn because I have fun with those too, right? They're still doing it and they think it works. And I don't understand it. I sent this to someone the other day. I just have to find one of them to read to you because, I get very entertained by these messages I get from people. Like some guy reached out. Hey there, hope you're open to connecting. I'm always available to chat about business or even how to make the best burger you've ever had. Okay. All right.
That's a little interrupt. Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'll give him a chance.
Yeah. It's a little bit different.
And then he goes in with his pitch on the next message. And I'm like, really?
Focus on the burger. One step at a time.
I get that with what would be a good day and time for you to talk? Had done his pitch. Then he does that, sends me a calendar link. I don't respond. Then messaged me again. Hey, Gina, I haven't heard back from you. It might have been a bad time to chat. Or maybe it was a bad message, dude. When can we hop on a quick call to connect? Like, come on, people, get your prospecting in order.
What should he have done?
He should have thanked me for connecting and then warmed me up in other ways by sending me relevant content I might be interested in looking at. He should have made some specific reference to me, my job, my company. He should have really done a deeper dive into my profile to find out what problem might she have that I could possibly solve. So in my messaging, I could put some relevant content in there that would compel her to respond.
Yeah, there you go.
Not that hard.
No. You can even tell your prospect you're doing that. I would like to be selling you right now, but my training says I need to see how I can relate to you. It's like, okay, that's transparent.
But I can't. It always surprises me that someone's teaching them how to do these things,
or not teaching them how to do these things.
And I literally have been doing things like, I agree, and then they send their dump on me, and my response lately has been, really?
So, the old selling adage is, show up, don't throw up.
Yep.
And they're throwing up, not showing up. And you have to show up differently today. So show up in a manner that works today, which isn't you're going to show up at their office and engage them and create a relationship face to face, which is the easiest way to do it. How are you going to create that somewhat of a relationship? And this is, but you have got to show up in a manner in which it shows that you care to some degree and that you're transparent about what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. I could go on a whole rampage about that.
Absolutely, you could, but we're running out of time.
Okay, one more. So you talked about sales and technology. What's going on with technology that they're struggling with from a talent?
It's just the demand. Every company has become a technology company. If you're not doing technology, you're going to go out of business. In some manner, you're not embracing technology. It may be as simple as, I say simple, it may be as simplistic as you're going to implement Salesforce or some kind of CR, something like that, or you're developing something. Every company is reliant on technology. And so the demand for the technology people is just out of the world. Not enough people to keep up. Name your price. So
how do we solve that problem?
So as a company, how do you solve that problem? This will get back to culture, but talented people, especially technology people, like to work with other talented people. And if you have A talent, you're going to attract A talent. If you don't, you're going to attract B and C talent. And then they're not going to, either they're going to stay and not do a lot of work and get paid a lot, or they're not going to stay. So it's such a challenge, So people like to work, top talent likes to work with top talent.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
So let's, as we end this show, wrap up this show, let's go back to, this brings us back full circle to culture, right? So looking at that going into 2022, what would be some good advice from a culture perspective? Like, I know you said I'm going to go fix my culture now. It's definitely not that easy, but let's just say they have a really messed up culture. What do they do?
Well, I think you have to first figure out where is it messed up. Keep in mind that culture always comes from the top.
Yeah.
So the first thing is, if you say, oh, wow, we have a messed up culture, the next thing you really need to do is, if you're a leader, is go look in the mirror and say, wonder what's messed up and why. And then you have to figure out how you address that. But, I think transparency and communication, and it's been said over and over and over again, and is key, as is the other side, which is setting expectations, black and white expectations and accountability. One of the best books I read this year, I absolutely love it. A lot of people don't agree with it, but it was written by Reed Hastings, who is the founder and CEO of Netflix.
Yeah. I know where you're going.
And it is called No Rules Rules.
Yeah, it's a great book.
It's a great book. And the Netflix culture deck has been a powerful deck for a number of years. The Netflix culture story is a great story. And one of the things that Netflix really does well, and this is one of the lead topics in this book, is setting context. And so I think that's one of the key things is set context. Jim Collins, who wrote Good to Great, which is another required reading book, talked about something called the hedgehog concept. And that's about figuring out what you do best. But part of that, the first step is, does everybody know what your economic drivers are? In other words, does everybody know how you make money, how the company makes money? And what was really interesting, I was going through this with one of my clients who has a very small staff, and half of her staff did not know how her company made money. Mm-hmm. And this is a great company. It's growing. It's going to go places. That realization that a large percentage of her staff didn't know how the company actually made money was key. And that's context, which gets, so just.
And I think it goes a little bit beyond that. I've always been a big fan of this. I did this running other companies. It wasn't just about telling the employees how we made money. It was also telling them how we spent money.
Absolutely.
Because they needed to understand the cost involved with doing business. And I feel like when employees understand that, there's a different buy-in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is. That gets into actually, the great old book, Great Game of Business. But does everybody understand the ins and outs, the profit and loss? The
profit and loss part of it is a big piece of it.
The income statement.
I think understanding margins. I suck at math, but I know how to figure out margins. Mm-hmm. When I'm pricing things out, right? Like I sell a service, but we have to be able to have first tell me what the barometer as a salesperson, right? Because we could be crazy. We're going to go out and sell things, but you got to sell things profitably, right? So just tell me what my number is that I have to be at from a margin perspective. And then I can go from there so I can understand it. But when you don't communicate, I see it happen all the time. It doesn't get communicated. And then the employee gets frustrated. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, did you know what you were allowed to price it at? It shouldn't matter. The company makes plenty of money, right? There's that attitude, right? The attitude of like, so what's wrong? They can afford it. Like, no, they really can't. If you understood how the company operated, you would realize that that's why there's this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But if leadership doesn't communicate it, that's the problem.
Right. And so, one of the ways to look at this is, are you selling off of a price list? And a lot of companies are selling off a price list. The question is, why is the price on the price list that price? Ooh. It's the why. And that goes back to the old Simon Sinek, start with why. Yeah. But why is the price on the price list that price? And the salespeople need to understand that.
Why is the price on the price list that price? Is that what you said?
Right. That's right.
Why is the price on the price list that price? Okay, because I want this to be the episode title.
If you're selling something at $10,000, why 10,000?
Yeah.
Why can't we sell it at 1,000? It'll sell easier.
Right.
Well, first off, you're selling on price, not value, but there is a reason.
Right. That's a good one.
It costs $10,000.
That's a good one.
It may be that the owner wants to make so much money, buys a jet, or you understand the real cost of the business and see.
Yeah. Well, this has always been fascinating to spend time with you talking about all of these things.
And it's always so wonderful to see your face, Gina. The beautiful smile, the laugh.
Go on. All right, Keith.
And
Walters.
You're so bright. The sales thing just fits you so well.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's a whole nother episode, but we got to go. So once again, happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday to you. Thank you. Gina has the best birthday parties when the environment allows it. Are you doing a charity birthday party this year?
I'm not doing my usual charity birthday party this year.
Okay.
With COVID, it's just been kind of a wonky thing. My birthday is already a challenging birthday to get people to show up. That's why I came up with the charity angle of guilting people into my birthday. And that's been effective. I mean, even you have gotten on a plane to do that. So until things are, I can get people out more, I'm not doing that. But instead, I'm excited. I'm going to Brook Green Gardens, which would technically be tonight. And it's the most amazing botanical gardens in the country. It's won all kinds of awards. They have their Night of 1,000 Candles. It's really beautiful. So there are just a few of us having dinner at the restaurant. And then, because I know the VP of operations, I will be turning on the Christmas tree.
Wow, lighting it up.
I'm lighting up the tree. Every night someone lights up the tree. And tonight it is me.
Wow.
How fun is that? So
that's fun.
So that'll be fun. So
that's good.
So let's wrap up this show and wrap up this year.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up. Thank you, Warners, for listening to this episode of The Women Your Mother warned you about with me, Gina Tremarco, and the amazing Keith Walters, who always has so much knowledge to share. For more information about our show, you know where to go. Go to womenyourmotherwarnsyouabout.com. You can also find us all over social media. And of course, if you want to be a really great salesperson in 2022, you need to go check out salesgravy.university. I've got a new course launching. Oh, I haven't told you about it, Keith, but it's called Creative Selling. I just launched my newest course, Selling with Stories. And now we are bringing you creative selling. So time to get creative. Check it out. Thank you, Sales Gravy, for sponsoring us. And we're out of here. Bye, Keith.
Gina. Bye.
Bye, Warners.
This really will get serious soon.
Yeah, it doesn't have to. I don't think anybody wants it to be serious.